For me, it's A&M football, Kentucky basketball, Ole Miss baseball. Those are the three worst teams, worst egos. In A&M, they're just losers.
Yeah.
The way they act, the midnight yell, just how they go about their business on a daily basis. Not necessarily the graduates, but like the kids in college. And I have friends that went to A&M, but I don't hold back when it comes to discussing that. And they hate me on your show, which they probably deserve.
For sure.
Their football program is the quintessential example that you can't just throw money into something and expect success, because they've never been good. They weren't good in the Southwest Conference, with the exception of a year here and there. Think about what they've done in the SEC. Yes, they had Johnny Manziel, but they've been clinging on that to 11-2 year. And then the one that you point out, the year with Kellen Mond, where they went 9-1 in the regular season. They've been cleaning those 2 seasons forever.
All right, buddy, back again. Tye Richardson, ESPN Arkansas. Hit that line. What's up, brother?
Man, what is up? It's good to be back here in Nashville, Mike. This is the mecca of SEC basketball this time of year. There was a lot of people there on Wednesday night. Lower bowl is usually full. That is, I think I've been to 6 or 7 of these things. That's the most I've ever seen on a Wednesday night. Upper bowl wasn't completely full, but there were a lot of neutral fans there, man. They saw 2 good games.
Yeah, and it's usually a bunch of garbage teams. Yeah. And not that those teams were great last night, but good games. You know, SEC is as competitive as I can ever remember in basketball.
And your Tennessee Volunteers are the leader of the pack at this point. I know they lost that last game to Kentucky, but I mean, you think about what Dalton Connect has been for Rick Barnes this year. You got Vescovy, you got Ziegler, Josiah Jordan-James, Adu's one of the most improved players of the league. Overall, I know they're top dog, but there are a lot of teams. Like South Carolina came out of nowhere. Georgia and Ole Miss started strong. They kind of fell off a cliff. But yeah, the SEC probably going to get, 5 or 6 teams in the tournament, and maybe a team like Arkansas could make a run. We'll see.
I had no idea you were an Arkansas guy.
Just wearing this as a little bit of luck to trying to lead these boys. I don't know when this is going to play, to be honest. So we'll see if Arkansas is still playing by the time this podcast is watched.
Hey, let's see. Can you move the mic just a little bit?
Yeah.
I don't want to cover your face.
Sure.
Gotcha.
Sure you don't want to cover this face?
Yeah, no, truth be told, I'll probably going to wait to post this for a couple weeks.
That's fine with me. Hopefully, I will, if Arkansas wins the SEC tournament, you'll probably have to attach the mugshot along with this picture. Oh, I don't know. I'm excited. I just enjoy it. You know, I tell you this all the time. Nashville's I would say the second best city in the United States of America, only behind Charleston, South Carolina. But you live here. You're lucky, man. I miss living here from time to time, and it's a good melting pot of SEC fans.
Yeah, I wish they did, selfishly, I wish they did the media days for football here every year. But we're going to be in Dallas. That's going to be quite the scene. I can't wait for that. It's spring football right now in Arkansas. Again, by the time this posts, it may not be anymore. But, man, I've never, Tye, I've been doing this for a while. Never have I seen a fan base basically, not a complete, but a near complete 180 turnaround by hiring Bobby Petrino. How is that in Arkansas with Bobby Petrino back? It just seems like, man, I can never remember a coordinator being this damn popular.
I don't know if the equivalent would be Bruce Pearl-esque. That's just kind of the name that came to front of mind for Tennessee if he was to ever leave Auburn and Barnes retired and they brought him back. That's kind of, again, both left in scandalous situations. One was recruiting, the other was, I guess, technically recruiting. If you want to, she did. I think she worked on that side of things. But it was like the jolt that it brought the Arkansas fan base initially was crazy. Now, you can't just have that bump and then like not have anything else. It's like this can't be like you hit a line of Coke and then just not have anything else. Like you have to sustain this the rest of the way. You can't have that drop off after that.
Right.
And for Arkansas, I mean, you go to Stillwater week 2, the defending Big 12 runner up who got their quarterback, the best running back in the country. They plucked AJ Green from you. All these wide receivers and linemen they brought back. So in addition to that already tough SEC schedule, which Tennessee's coming to town for the first time in a few years. It's going to be a wild year.
Yeah, but I mean, Oklahoma State's got a lot back, but they're weird, man. I mean, they played, didn't they, for the Big 12 championship last year? But they also lost to South Alabama.
Yeah,
they're so up and down.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have confidence in them against. Now they'll probably get up for Arkansas just because it's SEC and just because of the pain of being an Arkansas fan. They'll probably get up for that. But who knows? I mean, they could win 10, 11 games next year, and you could still tell me they lost to Arkansas, and I'd believe you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, I'll be happy if Oklahoma State wants to have another 10 or 11 win season, but still having a loss to Arkansas week 2. That'd be great. I mean, the Razorbacks have an incredible home schedule. You got LSU, you got Tennessee, who I mentioned, Texas and Ole Miss all coming into your building. The road game this year is Texas A&M, one of the road games you have to play. That's the final year of that contract. So,
thank God.
Yeah, I think Arkansas fans feel that same way. I mean, you think about that, since 2012, they've won that game one time. In 2021, that was because of one player, Traylon Burks. But it is a game that Arkansas fans are tired of, and we'll be back to College Station Fayetteville after this. But this season, it can't just be built around Bobby Petrino. Travis Williams showed Arkansas fans some signs last year that he's a competent defensive coordinator. They brought in some guys, lost a lot. It's gonna be a lot on Sam Pittman. He's like I think he has. Mike, don't hold me 100% to this stat, but I believe in one-score games under Sam Pittman, they're 6-14, which Petrino had one of the better records as an Arkansas coach in that time span.
Yeah,
a lot of people think that he's just going to help in these in-game and late-game situations. We'll see if that's a facade or if that's actually reality this season.
Yeah, and I think there for a time he was like lost 9 in a row or 8 in a row, one-score game, something like that. But one thing I don't think enough people are talking about, which I think could really help a team like Arkansas, is they're going to approve the communication in the helmet for the play callers to the quarterbacks. So I think people like Bobby Petrino at Arkansas, Heupel, Tennessee, Kiffin, Ole Miss, Sarkisian at Texas, I think that's really, really going to aid a lot of these elite play callers being in the ear of the quarterback going before, especially if you go quick, because you can talk to them all the way up to the snap as long as it's, the way I understand it, the play clock hits 15, that communication's cut. But for a lot of teams, they never get down to 15. So I don't know. I think that's something that is being under discussed in college football.
Yeah, and it sounds like, again, it's going to pass from various reports, and your coaches are like, yeah, it's going to pass. We're just waiting on the ruling to come down at this juncture. And yeah, I mean, I think Arkansas only benefits from that, but like you said, you just listed off 3 coaches Arkansas has to play this year: Sark, Kiffin, and Heupel with Nico. Now, I'm not sold 100% on Jackson Dart just yet. I think Ole Miss has every little piece they need defensively and offensively to make it to Atlanta for the SEC championship. But is Dart a dude? Like, last 2 years, he's had his ups, he's had his downs. Like, you can't do. Georgia's coming to their house this year.
If Ole Miss doesn't win big, it's because of Kiffin or Dart. And
Dart.
There's no excuses.
Dart.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they don't have Bama this year. I mean,
right.
Kiffin never beat Saban. He only got 3 or 4 cracks at him, at least in Tuscaloosa, or at least in Oxford. Arkansas never beat Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa. 07 to last year, did not beat him one time. But yeah, that's the quarterbacks. And then Ewers. What's crazy about this is Ewers is coming in and Texas coming in. He's probably the best quarterback in the league. Like, and I hate saying that as
I would throw Carson Beck in there too.
Yeah,
potentially.
See, to me, like, Ewers wins games. Beck he's the old Alabama quarterback mold. He just
a
hands
guy,
the ball off. Yeah, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I mean, go back to the Alabama game last year.
He got tight in that one.
When he goes up against that elite and I'm talking like an Alabama or another elite SEC team, I don't think he's going to have what it takes. I think he's an old Alabama quarterback in that mold, which Kirby's won that way, but we saw last season when push come to shove, and maybe he changes this year, he didn't have it. We'll see if the Lambo helps him get it this year.
Well, Nick Saban's out here bitching. Kirby's guys driving $300,000 car, you know?
You would think that the coaching staff and guys within that and gals within that NIL collective would push them not to broadcast having fast cars based on everything that's happened in Athens. And I don't want to make too much light of that, but is there a more dangerous football program driving cars than Georgia? At least and I know Atlanta's a big.
Yeah.
You got the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is a huge newspaper outlet, and everything they do online, and it's the most prominent football program in the country right now, with the exception of maybe Alabama. So you've got a lot of attention, but off-season news a lot of times has not been good for Georgia. It's been more negative, and that, again, he hasn't wrecked or done anything bad in the Lambeau. It's just it's not exactly the best of looks when everything has occurred off-season the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, if one wreck could derail their season. You know what?
I'd be curious to see if there was an injury, because we've seen with Alabama, Saban has had injuries to his starting quarterbacks. What has happened in between? I'd be if for Beck at Georgia, for Ewers at Texas, if Arch was thrown into that role, or I don't even know who Ole Miss's backup quarterback is, but Walker Howard, kid that got
dating
from LSU.
Kiffin's daughter.
No, he's not.
Big no. You know?
Is he really?
As I understand it. I try not to follow players' personal shit.
Wow.
But that was newsworthy, I thought.
I feel like that's the one thing as a starting quarterback or for much less a football player you do not do, especially in college. You don't take that. Whatever, man. That's good. Good luck with that one.
So how high does let's get back to Tye's hate rankings. Is it still A&M number one? How close is Kiffin and Ole Miss? And now, of course, we got Texas in the league. So could they possibly vault the Aggies somehow?
I think the majority of people wearing one of these will tell you Texas is still number one. Mm-hmm. I think the Oklahoma edition is going to be underrated. Oklahoma, Norman and Fayetteville are the closest campuses of anyone that Arkansas plays. And, again, great football program over the years. Really good softball program, which Arkansas has risen in. Baseball, they were in the College World Series finals a couple years ago. That's not initially traditional, but just the proximity, a lot of times, it does it for people. Think about how close Lexington and Knoxville are together.
Right.
I like that potential there. It's still, for me, now, Arkansas fans, it's probably, I would say, Texas, LSU, then you'd have probably Ole Miss or A&M. For me, it's A&M football, Kentucky basketball, Ole Miss baseball. Those are the three worst teams, worst egos. Again, A&M, they're just losers.
Yeah.
the way they act, the midnight yell, just how they go about their business on a daily basis. Not necessarily the graduates, but like the kids in college. And I have friends that went to A&M, but I don't hold back when it comes to discussing that. And they hate me on your show, which they probably deserve to do.
For sure. But it's amazing to me how much resources and everything they have and that they throw into it, especially football.
Mm-hmm.
And now I guess even basketball got buzz, and I think they hired an elite baseball coach, but it's like, it doesn't seem to matter, does it?
I think, if I remember correctly, Schlossnagel's their baseball coach. Buzz Williams is the epitome of him. And I like Buzz Williams. I think he'd be fun to play for, but they're mediocre. Their football program is the quintessential example that you can't just throw money at something and expect success, because they've never been good. They weren't good in the Southwest Conference, with the exception of a year here and there. You think about what they've done in the SEC. Yes, they had Johnny Manziel, but they've been clinging on that to 11-2 year. And then the one that you point out, the year with Kellen Mond, where they went 9-1 in the regular season, they've been cleaning those two seasons forever. And this is coming from an Arkansas fan who Arkansas has not done jack since 2010, 2011. I will fully disclose that. But I'm also not of the belief that the Razorback football program is just this juggernaut waiting to happen. And you say, well, all the resources ain't in it, but you just look at each coach, each track. There's not examples or prevalent examples of that program ever amounting to anything worth what they think themselves as. There's a difference between being like, that could be a good program versus what they think of themselves. And it's one thing to meet an Alabama fan who's egotistical. They have the championships to back it up. I get that. But I don't know what A&M fans are proud of at all.
Did you
at
ever?
all.
Were you ever aware? Because this just came to my attention. I'm sure this was big time news when it happened. But what's his name? Dennis Franchione, his email newsletter thing.
You're gonna have to refresh me on that.
So he
or
was at
update me.
Alabama.
Okay.
He was the head coach, and he left to go to Texas A&M. And this was before they joined SEC. That's kind of why I was unaware of it.
Mm-hmm.
But he had elite boosters, like high level boosters. He would write them. I don't know how often he did it, like once a month, once a week, whatever. But he would give them a detailed newsletter that was not to be shared with anybody. And it was like, this player's injured here. This guy's not on the depth chart. Intimate things that you do not share with the public. And you could sign up for this. And he was making like $30,000 a year. Additionally, for this exclusive newsletter. And when it got discovered, they fired his ass soon after, but it was like, how fucking stupid can you be?
Jeez, and that's what the NIL stuff. What my co-host always talks about, and he's exactly right. You're paying for access to a certain extent. Yes, you want your team to win. Yes, you want to say that you have a part of that, but you want to be able to pick up the phone and talk to a GA, a coach, someone within the athletics department, and get information so you can tell your golf buddies or your drinking buddies or your whoever you hang out with, wherever you hang out with, hey, I know this because I have a big dick and I can pay all this money to contribute to A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, and in NIL-wise, it's not feasible to last in its current structure. But I think the access, like you meant with Francho, they had to pay for that.
Right.
That's basically what NIL has turned into.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I did want to ask you about Arkansas and NIL because we all know that there is super rich people there that are big Razorback fans. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you hear their NIL. It depends on who you ask. I mean, I had Trey Biddy on the other day.
Trey's fantastic.
He was talking about how the NIL has improved. And guys, he pointed to like Landon Jackson, how you don't get someone like that without NIL. And I know the basketball team, I'm sure many of those, and I'm not saying there's no NIL, but I would just think it would be like Ole Miss level potentially if they wanted it to be. And I'll give you an example. And this is not telling you anything you don't know, I would assume, but maybe for the audience. Like I was talking to someone yesterday about, what is it, that Touchdown Little Rock Club or whatever?
Little Rock Touchdown Club,
It's literally everybody. I mean, they've had Petrino in there. They've had John Gruden, Kurt Herbstreit, Paul Feinbaum, and I hear they have just like wealth upon wealth there. And how they get people like that, I think they pay a lot of them, and they get private jets, and I'm like, in Little Rock Touchdown Club? But I know it's a big deal, but I didn't realize they had that type of money. So they could certainly throw that into, and like KJ, I remember I think he was the one that Yurachek was getting mad about, like, you know how much these guys are getting paid, yada, 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 but it's like, and I know that didn't live up to the hype, so that's probably a bad example. But would you rather, I don't know, I'd rather have a guy like that in college football and be the face of your program, and maybe he is the next Jaden Daniels or Joe Burrow, than opposed to them going to the NFL and being like a 6th-round pick. I don't know. I think that's good for football. I agree to disagree, I guess. But what will it take for those big, huge money boosters to throw it into Arkansas to get them to be like Ole Miss or even Missouri, who's kind of kicking ass in NIL?
Well, you bring up those two schools. They both had 10 or more wins last year, and that's the first time Ole Miss has ever done that in the regular season alone, not with the bowl season. So it takes wins. And the U of A, they messed up. You had the 9-win season, right? And they didn't push. It was originally one Arkansas NIL. They didn't push that. Now it's Arkansas Edge. They've transformed it. They just were late to the party. Now the team sucked, and you can't. It's hard to push. It's hard to push sharing money when you've had a bad basketball team and a bad football team. Baseball team's number one in the country right now. That's a little bit easier, but it doesn't have the same push as the football and basketball team do. And so that was a mistake. Again, you mentioned those two schools that have had success. Ole Miss fans trust Lane Kiffin. I don't know if they'll win and get to Atlanta this year, but they sure look like they can. Right. And they got Georgia. The biggest game in the SEC this season is when Georgia comes to Oxford in November, I think. I think it's November the 9th. I think that's the biggest game of the season. And then in terms of Little Rock Athletic Club, David Basil, who's a friend of mine, he's done a fantastic job accumulating guests, building a Rolodex, because bigwigs know bigwigs. And so they're like, okay, this was worth my time. They tell their friends, and their friends are great coaches or great businessmen or whatever who they brought in, and it's worth it. I think like Little Rock is there's also what doesn't get talked about enough, and I don't know if it's this way in Tennessee with Nashville, 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 and Memphis. But there's also still a power struggle and a power dynamic between Little Rock and Northwest Arkansas. You got the old money in Little Rock, and you got the new money in Northwest Arkansas, and the colleges in Northwest Arkansas. Right. And so you've got the Capitol, Governor Sanders, everything in Little Rock, and so there's the consistent need to almost outdo one another, even though it would be better if you just combined forces and helped out NWA. But again,
and that's why they still play the damn game there every so often.
And that's probably going to expire unless something crazy happens. That's going to expire next year when Arkansas State and the Razorbacks play football for the first time, which is a whole nother can of worms. But I don't know what the equivalent would be here because I honestly, Banner.
That's not completely foreign to, because the rest of the SEC used to do stuff like that. Auburn and Alabama, they'd play
Legion, baby,
Legion Field. I'm pretty sure Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they used to play in Jackson sometimes. I mean, so this is not foreign, but to me it's a bad look for Arkansas that basically everybody has moved on and they're kind of stuck in that old model.
And I guess the only current example would be Georgia and Florida, which Kirby seems to be really pushing against getting out of Jacksonville.
He needs help, Tye. He's only won 2 out of the last 3. Should have been probably 3 out of the next 4, you know?
I guess he's just trying to get more home games in Sanford Stadium, which, by the way, is about, I mean, we walked in there. Arkansas got pounded there back in 2021 with an undefeated record. Number 8 in the country is 36-0 before you can blink. That is, I know that we talk about Tiger Stadium, we talk about the Swamp, but what Sanford Stadium has become is one of the more intimidating venues in college football. And that was a 12 o'clock game in the afternoon, and the fans were there 30 minutes before. It was really impressive. But I think your original question was, how do you get the Little Rock money to invest? You got to win. They have to believe that their money's like we were talking before the show. The money you invest a lot of times is on your equipment, and that's why you have such a good product. Is not only are you and Shane funny as hell, but you invest on the extracurriculars that we don't think about all the time. And for Arkansas fans, it's like we're a poor state. We're in the South, right? We don't exactly have just these like treasure troves of riches that we can just expendable money. And so you're asking people, in addition to everything they have to pay for their just own livelihood, to contribute for foundation, football tickets, parking, all these other intangibles, and then add that on top. People are strapped for cash right now, but they will still find a way if Arkansas all of a sudden wins games. If Petrino, they somehow win like 8 games this next year, which is just absurd to even speculate on, then you will see Arkansas's NIL increase because they feel like, fans feel like, and the big wigs feel like it's worth the investment. We could get back to where we once were 10 plus years ago. And you might not. I mean, again, their Vegas line right now is 5.5. I would tend to think under right at 5. And I don't know if Sam Pittman makes it if they just have 5 wins this fall.
Yeah. Is that, I know people bitch and moan about NIL and the portal and all that, but isn't that kind of a case for it? I think Mizzou and Ole Miss are the perfect reasons why it's great, because I think it was laughable to consider those two as like playoff national championship contenders
4 years ago. No,
but now I think it's legitimate. And Missouri, I don't know how much you've looked at their schedule, but they're going to win 10 games.
Oh, again. It's horrible. It's the worst. It's the worst. I watched one of your clips. I watched you and Shane talking about it.
So they're going to be good again, at least record wise, and I think they'll be good overall. But Ole Miss specifically, I think, there's a lot of talk Ole Miss playoff. I think Ole Miss national championship is. I'm not picking them to do it, but it would not stun me if they're in like the Final Four.
Yeah. So if you had, we posted this question the other day. I think Alabama's going to take a step back. I know that I don't know, Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's gone, but I just, even a 12-team playoff, I'm not so sure about it. Right. You're betting on our team. Georgia's won, right? But if you had the choice between Texas, Ole Miss, and Missouri, you mentioned the schedule. The schedule is huge. Texas did not get any favors done to them entering the SEC. Their schedule's tough. And then Ole Miss, it's not as bad as Missouri's is, but it's close. It's not that difficult either. So those are, I mean, again, Georgia's one, but you would lump Ole Miss and Missouri with Texas as probably the next three teams that are most likely to make the college football playoff from the SEC. And I'm putting those teams above Bama, even with Milroe back, even with DeBoer, who's apparently, I mean, not apparently, we've seen it firsthand, a really good offensive guy.
Yeah.
I would, if I had money to bet on, I would bet it on those three teams before I'd bet on Alabama to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And I'm a little biased, but I think Tennessee, if Nico, which again, nobody truly knows how good he is, but if he's, I don't like to bash college players, but so I'm always careful about how I say this. But
yeah.
I think Joe Milton, not that he was awful, because that's not right, but he was far from elite. And I think his tools, it's like these coaches, when they see someone what they can do, they're like, I can fix him. Like, I think he's going to be probably not a high round draft pick, but I bet you he's a mid-level pick.
He's got a little Anthony Richardson who just throw a mile.
Right.
You love the way he looks as a quarterback, but I don't think we appreciated, and I was pushing him still to win the Heisman Trophy after he tore his ACL. I don't think we will ever appreciate how good Hendon Hooker was. I mean, you talk about a guy, I have never seen an Alabama defense get as ripped to shreds as they did that night I almost said Thompson Bowl in Neyland Stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I have no ill will towards Tennessee or Alabama. It was just an incredible football game. And what I watched is, and I've seen Johnny Manziel go up against Bama. I've seen Tim Tebow. I've seen Cam Newton. I've seen all these quarterbacks that have beaten Alabama, but never like he was able to. They could not figure him out or Jalen Hyatt out. And so I think, again, my expectation, because I remember talking to you the previous summer, was that Joe Milton was going to come in and just start finishing off what Hendon Hooker did and take them potentially to the SEC. Because I thought that Tennessee would beat Georgia this year.
Yeah, I remember.
And he just didn't, like you said, you don't want to, and I'm not going to rip a kid because I don't know him, but he wasn't what we expected him to be at that position. And this Nico, 5-star, can throw it a country mile. I'm excited to watch him, except when he comes to Fayetteville this fall. Golly.
And the thing is, because people get enamored with the offense, but what they don't seemingly pay attention to is the team around the quarterback is getting progressively better in Knoxville. So but again, I think this is a defining year because you never should have lost to Florida. That's a black eye, I think, particularly just that Florida more than anything. And then getting your ass kicked by Mizzou. The way I think it was 36-7 or something like that. Like, that was embarrassing.
Dude, what did you and I didn't watch this reaction show, and I haven't watched this show since Eli let it be known why he said that to Josh Heupel. When you heard that soundbite of him saying, "We stand on business, Josh," and walking off, and again, Drinkwitz shared that like he told the defense he would do it if they played a great game, which they did. But that's like something you do in like middle school or high school. You're a Tennessee guy. Were you just like wanting to throw your beer at the TV when you saw that?
Yep. We stand on business, Josh. Missouri wins number 8.
I mean, he's unique. I'll say that. You know what I mean? He's they call him Dorkowitz a lot.
Douchewitz.
Well, I've not heard that one. I hear Dorkowitz a lot, but
I hate that I kind of like him a little bit.
Yeah.
The more I listen to him and the more I watch him, even though he looks like Andy Bernard from The Office,
yep,
I'm like, gosh damn it, I kind of like this guy. And
for me, it's good anytime any of these guys that talk, because I can't stand Billy Napier, now Kalen DeBoer, unfortunately. Yeah. Kirby's completely different off camera than he is on. But like these guys that are they're like trying to be Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, where they give you nothing. That's horrible for business. So Drink can say whatever the hell he wants, particularly if he's winning. You know, fans eat it up. But they were ready to run his ass off a year ago too. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, staying on business. I was like, I don't really. At the time, most people were just confused. What the fuck is he talking about? Yeah. Staying on business, like what business?
Can you imagine being Josh Heupel in that situation? Mike and just being like, all right, hey, coach, good game. And then hearing that and be like, what the hell?
But you got to see. Here's I think where Mizzou fans would say, and they have a point. I think 2 years ago, well, really the 2 years prior, Tennessee beat the hell out of Missouri, like 60-20, and 2 years ago, this was the Hendon Hooker year. They killed him too, but they wanted to get Joe Milton reps. So that was the play where, I don't know if you've seen it, but he threw like a 75-yard touchdown pass with like a minute left in the, you know what I mean? Like they were piling it up. But in their defense, they were looking at it through like the playoff committee, and you want to get massive wins. But so they ran up the score on Missouri. So I think if Missouri whoops your ass the next year, honestly, I think it's fine if you kind of rub it in their face a little.
Okay.
I don't know if I would yell that at the opposing coach, but to each their own.
But here's what I will say, and I've said this about some basketball coaches. Like, I think Eric Musselman and Nate Oates hate each other. I think more Muss hates Oates than anything. That's good. I don't like when coaches, and we see this too much in certain leagues and professional leagues today, is everyone's friendly with each other.
Right.
There needs to be some good old-fashioned hatred. That's what rivalries are built on. I mean, you hate Florida. You hate Alabama. Coaches not liking each other. Players not. Now, I know sometimes it can escalate and get to a point where it's not good for anyone, but I kind of like when coaches see each other in the hallway and are like, in their mind, they're like, bleep you, man. I'm going to beat your you-know-what this year. So
Right. No, I'm right there with you. That's why, I mean, I appreciate the NFL for being elite at football, the highest level, but I won't say I can't watch it because I love the playoffs and all that, but I don't watch it during. I'm busy with college football, but it's that very reason, man. It's like after the game, they're all boys and they're just hanging out, changing jerseys, and I'm like, I can never imagine Tennessee and Florida players like sharing jerseys and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like it should be if you get us this year, we're gonna work all year to whoop your ass next year.
I know this is an SEC podcast, but I will say, and Alabama and Auburn are probably the only equivalent, maybe you could toss in another SEC rivalry, but the amount of energy exerted between Alabama and Ohio State coaches and players for that game every year is maybe one of the greatest things we see in sports.
Right.
The fact that they have countdown timers, they each have signs in their locker room and their weight room of talking about the team down south, the team up north. I just think that's great. And I love watching that game. I mean, you get the Iron Bowl and you get that game on the same day. I know Arkansas, Missouri's up there too, Mike. I mean, in terms of the rivalry, but it's one of the coolest things in college sports. How much those two teams, coaches, players, fan bases hate each other.
Well, Missouri and Arkansas, you think that'll develop into a rivalry?
I think Drink is single-handedly making sure it stays that way. And I mean, Pittman's got to beat him, man. Drink can keep on yapping if he keeps winning.
Right.
Let's say how do you shut up a bull? You punch him in the face. You got to punch Drinkwitz in the face, not literally, but
because every time I post something Arkansas, it's nothing but Mizzou.
Yeah. And
anytime I do Mizzou, it's about half Arkansas just shitting on Mizzou.
And what I've come to understand, and this, I think it was Chuck Barrett, the voice of the Razorbacks, that said it on our show, is that Missouri fans really want to beat Arkansas. And because, again, they don't have the border war with Kansas. I guess they played basketball this year, but they don't have that football game. They don't have the traditional that they have that. And so now their bordering state and their bordering college is Arkansas. And it's very similar to the dynamic of when LSU first played the Razorbacks. You bring in the Golden Boot. This one has the Battle Line Trophy. Mm-hmm. One school that was in the SEC doesn't care. The other one does. The other one's doing whatever they can to beat them. And the other school better wake up. It took LSU a little bit, and it's still occasionally they're not woken up for that game because LSU's more talented than Arkansas every single year in football. There hasn't been a year since Arkansas joined the SEC that they've been more talented than LSU, but they're either outcoached or just outmotivated in that game, and that's why occasionally Arkansas wins, or not occasionally, it's been more than that. Missouri, on the other hand, had better players last year, has a better coach. I mean, it's undeniable. You can, as an Arkansas fan, you have to admit Eli Drinkwitz is a better coach. And Sam's just got to disprove that. He's got to make people think, no, I can coach a little bit too. And you can do that at the end of the year against Missouri and Columbia.
Yeah. Do you think that, because you see this some people write columns and shit like this, and I've seen fans even discuss it that Arkansas should get out of the SEC. You hear stuff like that every now and again. Do you buy into that? Do you think Arkansas can win at a high level in the SEC?
Basketball, yes. Baseball, we've seen it, and we've seen it in basketball too. I don't want me to overjump that. I think football-wise, one, they would never leave on their own accord. Yeah. The SEC would kick them out. They would find some legality. And I've people have been mad on Arkansas Sports Talk Radio ways I've said that. But I keep going back to the premise of if all these colleges and institutions can find ways out of their contracts with conferences, what makes you think the conferences can't find their way out of contracts with these schools that don't bring in the same television revenue, that don't have, not revenue, eyeballs, brands? What makes you think that they couldn't figure that out? It can't be just a one-way street. So that worries me if Arkansas continues to do this in football and other schools, their contracts are expiring, they're up, and they're bigger brands, they're better football programs than Arkansas. Some will tell me I'm nuts, but I just don't like that idea. Yes, Arkansas can have success in the SEC, but what's success? It's not conference championships. They've never won one. They've been to 3 of them, 95, 02, 06. They lost all 3. Only one was a good game when we lost to Tim Tebow, Chris Leak in Florida. The other 2 were
punt, right?
Yeah, the muff punt, Reggie Fish. 02, you
didn't Urban call a fake punt though?
He called a fake punt. Same possession.
Yeah, okay.
I was at Cotillion my 6th or 7th grade year, and right as that muff punt happened, I had to go dancing, which was just for a kid that loved Arkansas football, was hell on earth. But that fake punt, that same drive after the fake punt, then they punted it again because they got stopped again. Then you had the muff and touchdown. I could still hear Vern's call, touchdown, Florida. That's a nightmare that plays in my head at least once a year.
But I think Ole Miss and Mizzou are examples right now, though, that you can. It's not. I don't think it's every year those teams are going to be elite, but I think you can quickly get there with the right coach, right pieces, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Now you need things to go your way. Like I think, and I think if he has a big year, he's going to be immortalized by Mizzou, and I'm talking about Luther Burden, because he was the first piece that he could have went to Georgia, could have went to Oklahoma, could have went to Ohio State, Bama, could have went anywhere, and he stayed home. And I think that kind of started something to where there was belief in the Missouri football program. And I don't know. I mean, it's not him alone. They needed Brady Cook to develop. They needed the defense to get there. A lot of things had to happen, but I mean, it's got to start somewhere. And I think he was that first domino. And I think Arkansas could get there.
I hope so. I hope you're right. So you mentioned, I mean, you got and I don't know that this would be a good question to ask is who's the better coach between Kiffin and Drink? Kiffin's done it twice. He's done it in the tougher division, so I would tend to favor him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Drinkwitz is no slouch. I know Missouri went to the SEC championship twice under Gary Pinkel. Mm-hmm. Georgia wasn't Georgia. Florida was down. Tennessee was nowhere near close to what they are now. Right. So for him to get 10 wins is also saying something, and for them to do what they did in Tennessee, I think, again, I think that when you look at what you have to match up schedule versus roster, Missouri has a slightly easier schedule, but they have a they have a lesser roster with all the pieces Ole Miss, assuming they mix. Like I say, you can't just bring guys in and them not mix because you've got all these outstanding. You brought in the offensive lineman from Washington. You brought in the great pass rusher from A&M, Florida. Yeah. A couple DBs. Like they got the number 1 or number 2 transfer haul. Them in Colorado kind of going back and forth.
You know who they added, most people overlook, is Juice Wells from South Carolina.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you pair him, and you're going to have to remind me, who's their really good wide receiver that Dart took a video with?
Trey Harris.
Yeah, Trey Harris. That kid was like, never do that again. But yeah, and that's, again, the best game of the year, or the most important game of the year is when Georgia comes to town. And I say most important, the regular season's diminished. I mean, Georgia could lose that game. They would probably still go to the SEC championship. They could lose the SEC championship and still go to the playoff. That's what I hate. You think about college football, like these games of the centuries, when you have 1 versus 2, right, or you have who's going to play for the conference championship. And I know it's not fair that Georgia probably didn't make the playoff last year, even though I think everyone listening thinks they're one of the best 4 teams in the country as of 2023, 2024. But you don't have that same consequential feel.
Right.
Because it's just going to be like, all right, they lost a close game, but they're still in. They're fine. That's the bummer about changing up the regular season to a 12-game playoff is it doesn't hit home like it used to in weeks 12 and 13. Not necessarily 12 because of the crappy games, but like 10 through 13, those games just don't mean as much anymore.
Right. Yeah, and it disgusts me, Tye, but you hear talk of like Georgia, so they're going to Texas this year. That's going to be another monumentous game. But some people are like, well, they could play there. They could play in the SEC championship, and then they could play in the college football. I mean, we're going to have scenarios where SEC teams potentially are playing each other 3 times in 1 year. It's like, God, I don't know. I don't think that's not what college football is about. That's NFL shit.
Yeah, I don't even know if I like rematches. I mean, what? So let's kind of do a timeline on this. So 2011, the LSU-Alabama rematch was terrible. You've had a Georgia-Alabama rematch, which was actually pretty good. Bama wins the SEC championship. Williams and Mechie get injured, and then they lose the national championship. Still a tight game until Bryce Young throws that pick at the end. It was an 8-point game. But I'm just not, that doesn't draw me. Like, they push it. Like, ESPN's going to push it. They're going to really be like, the rematch that everyone's looking forward to. I don't know if I necessarily feel that. I feel like you do. They don't always pan out, and I don't have that same energy I do for a first-time meeting. Now, what has to happen is you have to have a team like Clemson was a few years ago, and really that's the only prevalent example outside of the SEC. I guess you could say Ohio State at least that went toe-to-toe with Georgia 2 years ago. But you have to have a team that, if they make it, you feel like will not give you a TCU type of effort and get beat by 56. Like, that's the difficulty of, hey, do you want the best national championship game, even though it's probably going to involve 2 SEC teams, or do you want to see a team play another team for the first time on the off chance that it might be a bloodbath, which, unfortunately, and I know Washington kept it kind of close last year, but that wasn't a great national championship game, I'd say, based on what we've had recently.
Right. Yeah, it looked like. Of course, they were somewhat competitive in this, but right out the gate, it was like, good God, Michigan's going to TCU.
Donovan Edwards, man. Golly.
So it is going to be weird to see, because I think ESPN, ABC, whatever you want, Disney, whatever you want to call it, they're going to be promoting SEC, of course, and then Fox is going to be nothing but Big Ten. So it's going to be like a dick measuring contest all football season long on who's got the best teams. But I think it's going to be a disaster for the Big Ten. I really do. With all this cross country, like I don't think players from UCLA and USC are. I don't think they're going to get the players they think they're going to get when you have to tell them, oh shit, we got to go 5 times a year to Indiana and Iowa and Jersey and all this, and same thing with Oregon and Washington. I don't know. Compare that to the SEC, where I get it, Texas and Florida. That's a haul, but I don't know. I don't even think those are comparable to me.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, regionally, you just look at how it's based, and again, it's the west, the furthermost west that you just added in Norman. I'm thinking where Norman and Columbia are. I think it's the 2 further with Austin and Norman. I know Austin is, but I think Norman is too. But it's still like, I know it's more like South Middle Conference, but it still they feel like SEC teams.
Right.
UCLA and USC don't. Oregon and Washington don't. And I mean, you got Rutgers, you got other stuff, and they're going to try and help their big teams out as best as possible. But yeah, the travel, I mean, that's going to be used in recruiting. Especially, I mean, you still got the majority. You've got SEC country, you got Georgia, Florida, now Texas, and then you've got California.
Yeah.
Those are the hotbeds for college football teams going to pluck high school players. And of course, you have the transfer portal that changes everything up. And
a lot of the elite California players, they come to the SEC anyway.
Yeah. We've seen it with Bryce Young. We've seen it with several other Nico's a California kid. So yeah, the SEC has a clear advantage in the travel situation, and they've had that. I am curious though, when they're pushing the idea of 3 SEC, 3 Big Ten teams, SEC and Big Ten get a bye. I'm curious if that pans out, because at that point, the SEC and And college football is telling us the Big Ten's comparable. Like we're on the same level. And I know the Big Ten gets more money than the SEC, but just curious if that ends up transpiring like it's been reported to, and if it plays out like that.
Are you excited for the Dallas Media Days?
I am. I mean, I look forward to SEC Media Days each and every year.
Is your brother going to come out?
He is going to be there. He'd like to meet you and cousin Shane.
We're going to do a podcast. We do it every year at Media Days now. Okay. So he's more than welcome to come out.
My brother's a big That SEC podcast fan. Loves you and your cousin. Occasionally will send me a screenshot or send me a text. Hey, did you hear this? Hear what the guys said? So he's ecstatic. You guys are going to have, so we've been to Birmingham, we've been to Nashville, been to Atlanta. This will be a new faction of SEC. Dallas is just like Atlanta. It's just like Nashville. It's just like Birmingham. It's a massive melting pot of SEC people. I mean, I've been there. I was just there for a wedding 2 weeks ago. I've been to Dallas probably 50-something times in my life, maybe more, maybe closer to 100. And it's amazing how many SEC flags you see. So, and what Sankey did is he just goes quick and put it right in the heart of Big 12 country and said, this is ours now. Yeah. And he's not wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I think what we're going to do, though, it's going to be hopefully it's not a disaster, but I think we're going to rent like a Sprinter van or something. Because I got so much damn gear.
Yeah.
Like I can't fly with all this stuff. So, it takes a day to get out there. And so, yeah, it'll be a sight.
Let me tell you this story real quick. So when I lived here back right out of college, we had our first post-college Arkansas friend group trip was in Austin, Texas. Float trip. We had 23 people in an Airbnb with the girlfriends, the boyfriends, and just all the boys. And I felt so bad for the girls, but they were troopers. We were like, all right, you need to marry her, you need to marry her, you need to marry her, because they stuck through just us, our drunken debauchery and various other activities we partook in that weekend. But we drove from Nashville to Austin, so tack on another 3 hours, and we did it all in the course of one day. I think it was 14 or 15 hours, and it was, imagine doing that after drinking for 3 straight nights on the way back. The way there was bad enough, but the way back was just atrocious.
What all did you get into down there?
You got I think it's the Brazos.
I thought you were going to say brothel.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to get interesting quick.
No. I'll tell you about this Vegas story off there. But you got that. There's the big, like, not lake, but there's something else. You've got the stream you floated, and then the lake area swimming. Had some really good authentic Mexican food. Saw the bats. There's this. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I've been down there. Checked it out.
Okay, so you've seen that. So
I like Austin. People give it shit. I think it's a pretty fun town.
Yeah, did the whole 6th Street thing. I thought that was a little overrated. There was like strippers in the windows, like convincing us to come to this bar. I'm personally, again, I've a lot of love. I know Broadway gets made fun of a lot, but I always have fun time in Nashville. There's various other, like I go to Beale Street in Memphis. There's so many college towns I've been to now. I think I'm up to like 7 or 8. SEC, give me an SEC town. Austin still doesn't feel like it. Feels like more New Orleans to me than it does an SEC town, but we'll see if they acquiesce to what our standards are, or we'll see if they keep Austin weird like they have for however many years.
All right, hey, before we close out, Tye, let's swing it back to Arkansas real quick. What do you need to see from Pittman and company for Sam Pittman to return in 2025?
He's got to get 6 wins, man. That's all you got to do. 6 wins. That's the bar. 3 non-conference. Probably not going to win that Oklahoma State game. You got to find 3 wins amongst on the road at Mississippi State, which you can do. A&M in Dallas, which hasn't been kind to Arkansas. New head coach Mike Elko. You go on the road.
You may have to give that one up with your history with A&M.
Maybe toss that one out. You go on the road to Missouri and on the road to Auburn, which I haven't heard a lot about them in the offseason, which I kind of find peculiar. They smashed Arkansas and Fayetteville this year. Then at home, again, Murderers Row, Tennessee, LSU, Texas, Ole Miss. You're not beating Ole Miss. You might beat Texas, even though I said earlier Quinn Ewers is the best quarterback in the SEC. You just never know about that game between Arkansas and Texas. Ole Miss, there are just tough games in the SEC this year, but that's what's going to make it fun.
I would say this: do you follow Dave Bartu at all? CFB Matrix?
Yeah. So he used to come on a radio show I interned for. I haven't followed his work for a while, but
he's great. And I saw him post something the other day, which was fascinating to me. just based on his numbers, and I love it because he's not a fan of any of these teams.
Yeah, he just takes the analytics.
That's all it is. He's just looking at the data, and he said that Tennessee at Arkansas, according to his numbers, is a complete toss-up, which was a surprise to me.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think there's games in there that Arkansas fans are unaware of that potentially are toss-ups types like that Tennessee game.
Is that your first trek to? Because you and Shane have not been to Fayetteville yet.
No, never. That's one we've got circled.
Okay, and I'll say this: I think there's going to be some tickets left over from Arkansas fans. You've got a good number of Arkansas constituents that listen to this program, so I think you might be able to sway a ticket to you. And we'll see if we can find you guys a beer. It is going to be entertaining to watch you interact with my brother and maybe some other Arkansas fans in Fayetteville, because they're going to see Old Orange or whatever, and they're like, I don't know if I like that, but we love you anyway, so we're gonna treat you like family, even though y'all might kick our ass tomorrow.
And do you think it's a foregone conclusion? What's his name? Taylor Green? Do you think he'll be the starting quarterback?
He's starting quarterback. I would, unless injury happens, that's the starting QB. They're going to play it off, and this is my opinion. This is no one. I haven't not been told any. Listen. He's a better leader. He's done the starting quarterback for it. He's 6'6". Petrino tried to get him in high school. He's been with the ones. This is not a...
Yeah, he's Petrino's guy.
Yeah, you don't have to... Sometimes people make too much out of something, and they pull one sliver, and they say, okay, this gives me 30 reasons to believe this. He's going to be a starting quarterback. They're supposed to name a guy by the end of the spring. It's probably going to be named him. They're going to give him the helmet you were talking about earlier with the earpiece, and they're rolling. The question is, will Criswell transfer? Will Malachi Singleton transfer? KJ Jackson's the young man they brought in from Alabama. I can't wait to watch him at some point. But I'm wondering, will one of the two other guys, kid from Morrilton, kid from the Georgia area, will they elect to hit the portal and see what else is out there?
Because wasn't he, I could be mistaken, but I think he was Mountain West Freshman of the Year like 2 years ago.
Tailed off a little bit last year, had an up and down season. Coach got fired. It was just a...
So I think there's potential there, ultimate boom or bust. Mm-hmm. You know, I hope it doesn't go sideways for Arkansas and Pittman, but, you know, if he's awful, you know, I could see that playing out. I could see it where maybe he's paired with Petrino. He's more that first year, and Arkansas could be one of the biggest surprises in the SEC.
The Tennessee game would be a huge victory for them. LSU without Jaden Daniels, and did they lose Thomas and
Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, Malik Neighbors. So they're not going to
running back.
Okay, yeah,
he's at Ole Miss.
Ole Miss now. Is it Diggs? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Yep.
Yeah, so they're not going to be the same football team, and Kelly's going to have to revamp.
They have no defensive tackles.
Yeah, because they lost Wingo and Mason Smith. Yeah, I
don't know what to make of LSU. I don't know that they're going to be very good.
That might be the most winnable game at home for Arkansas, and you never say that about LSU. Think about that. Between Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Texas, I would probably say LSU's the most winnable. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head where it sits in the schedule. I think it's early. I think if I'm just thinking off that, that's the most winnable game that Arkansas has of the 4 SEC home games in Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm. So knowing what you know now, can you give me a record prediction? And we won't hold it to you because it's so far away. Things can change, but in none of this, 5-7. No, I want a straight prediction.
5. I'm going to say 5-7, and I don't want but if they go 5-7, Sam Pittman's going to get let go.
Yeah,
they're not going to be able to hold off the Wolves. So I'm hoping for 6-6, but I think 5-7. And there are some people within the state, fans, media members that either say it publicly or privately, that want Sam Pittman. They want to transition. What I want is them to win 7 or 8 games. Petrino to be a huge part because he's coming back for the apology tour. He's still. If I had to guess, there's genuine remorse, and he's not the most emotional guy. Anytime he talks, but he's I want to figure this thing the fuck out. I want to fix what I fucked up into a ditch 10 plus years ago and figure that out. And if he can do that, now, again, the apology probably still needed to, it's not going to happen anymore, but probably shouldn't have been an apology to not just the Little Rock Touchdown Club, as we talked about earlier, but to all the people that got let go when he got fired, all the people that he affected in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to happen now, but that would be an apology from a performance standpoint. And most Arkansas fans would be okay with that because the football program has had an 8-win season and a 9-win season since 2012, and that's the climax.
Right.
That's the climax. And that's like the Butch Jones standard when he was at Tennessee. That is the climax for Arkansas football. They're hoping for more, and maybe Bobby will be one of the architects to help figure that out this year.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, Tye, before you go, can you tell the audience where can they find you and where can they find your work?
Yeah, we're at Tye Sports Radio on Twitter. ESPN Arkansas, hitthatline.com. We got a brand new app, Hit That Line Now, and then we're always on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and I say Twitter, X, and Instagram too. I've cursed more on this show than I have in the last year during mine, and it's the on FCC. I probably should have made a Coke reference earlier, but you know.
Hey, we appreciate it. All right, Tye, thank you so much, man.
You got it, buddy.